Imagine a teenage singer, so charismatic, so talented, he became the first black superstar. A pioneer who set trends, influenced legends like Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder, and changed music forever. We're talking about Frankie Lymon, the Golden Throat, and his group, the Teenagers. Their hit, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, captivated the world. But his meteoric rise lasted only 18 months before everything came crashing down. His life, a dazzling comet across the sky, ended in tragedy at just 25. His death, still a mystery. Let's uncover the astonishing and heartbreaking story of Frankie Lymon. Frankie Lymon was born on the 30th of September 1942 in Harlem, New York. Life was rough. His mother was a maid, his father a truck driver, but both were gospel singers in a group called the Harleminaires. Frankie learned to sing from his dad, performing with his brothers in the Harlem Juniors. At just 10 years old, after his parents separated, Frankie started working at the corner grocery store, ringing up sales and delivering packages to help his family. But he was growing up fast in other ways too. He admitted to smoking weed and hustling prostitutes for white men in his Harlem neighborhood. He knew all the prostitutes, getting a cut for hooking them up, and even endured sexual acts. He had to mature far too quickly. Frankie's dream was showbiz. Everyone knew he could sing. In Harlem, teenage singing groups popped up everywhere, harmonizing on street corners. One group, the Coudevilles, included Jimmy Merchant, Sherman Garnes, Joe Negroni, and Herman Santiago. They practiced the same song so much that a neighbor, tired of hearing it, gave them old love letters and poems, suggesting they write their own songs. In that batch was a poem titled Why Do Birds Sing So Gay, which would later become the iconic Why Do Fools Fall in Love. Frankie admired the Coudevilles, who later changed their name to the Ermines. He begged to join, even though he had his own group, the Esquires. After seeing Frankie perform at a school talent show, the Ermines finally let him in. They knew he was young, but he acted like a grown man on the streets, mature beyond his years. With Frankie, the group now called the Premiers, practiced every night until neighbors called the cops. One day, Richard Barrett, lead singer of the famous group The Valentines, moved into an apartment right above Frankie's grocery store. He heard them singing one night. Impressed, Barrett, who was also an A&R for G Records, took them to meet his boss, George Goldner. Goldner was hesitant. They were just kids, and the legal paperwork would be a headache. But Barrett convinced him to give them a chance. At the audition, Frankie, who usually sang background, impressed George Goldner with his confidence, energy, and babyface look. Goldner saw a star. He signed him, but Frankie had to be the lead vocalist. They needed original material. They took the poem Why Do Birds Sing So Gay, which they had been rehearsing as a slow ballad, and Frankie, inspired by Richard Barrett's suggestion for an upbeat song, rearranged and rewrote it, turning it into the fast-tempo Why Do Fools Fall in Love. After 26 takes, Goldner was satisfied. He also changed their name from the Premiers to the Teenagers. For the song's publishing, Goldner initially promised everyone's name would be on it, but later, he only put his name and Frankie's as songwriters, cheating the others out of royalties. This was just the start of the shady business that would plague Frankie's career. On the 10th of January 1956, Why Do Fools Fall in Love was released. It exploded. Number 1 on an R&B chart, number 6 on the Billboard Pop Singles chart, and number 1 in the UK, making it the first R&B rock and roll song to top the UK chart. It was ranked number 314 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. The song took the world by storm. The crazy part? The Teenagers didn't even know the song was released until a white girl at their school was singing it, telling them it was by 5 white girls because she thought Frankie sounded like a girl. They were shocked and thrilled. When they appeared on TV in their matching outfits, kids went wild, setting a trend for future groups. White artists like Gail Storm and the Diamonds quickly released cover versions, profiting off their original work, a sad reality for black artists back then. But none could touch Frankie Lymon's original. The group became a global sensation, touring with Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and the Platters. On tour, one 4-year-old Frankie began a relationship with one 9-year-old Zola Taylor of the Platters. They enrolled in a school for professionals, taking correspondence courses on the road, but they also faced brutal racism, especially in the South. White groups stayed in nice hotels, black musicians in shacks. Their white bus driver had to order food for them, as blacks weren't allowed in restaurants. Angry whites picketed venues with racist signs, but black and white kids, united by their love for rock and roll, held their own signs. Rock and roll is here to stay. Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers were the most popular group in the world. They released more hits. I Want You to Be My Girl, Who Can Explain, ABCs of Love. But George Goldner, the label owner, wanted Frankie to go solo. He changed the group's name to Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers, causing tension. When confronted, Frankie confirmed his solo plans. Management broke up the group while they were on a European tour. They saw Frankie as the star and could make more money dealing with just him. The other teenagers were also being cheated, given a mere $25 a week, with millions supposedly going into a trust fund until they turned 21. When they finally checked, there was only $1,700. The group broke up after only a year and a half, after over 500 shows. There were fights, but they remained friends. It was management that caused the split. The label promised the other teenagers their own album, but it never happened, and they were released from their contracts. Meanwhile, George Goldner, a gambler deep in debt, sold G Records to Morris Levy, the notorious godfather of the music business and a mob-connected figure. Levy, who owned over 90 companies, now controlled Frankie's contract. After convincing Frankie's 4-year-old mom to let him go solo, Frankie was signed to Levy's Roulette Records, earning $5,000 a week to perform. He debuted Goody Goody Solo on The Ed Sullivan Show. But by now, Frankie's voice had changed, deepened, losing its signature boyish charm. On the 19th of July, 1957, on Alan Freed's live ABC TV show, The Big Beat, Frankie made history. While performing Little Bitty Pretty One, he started dancing with a white teenage girl. This was huge. At the time, black and white teenagers were separated by a red wire on dance floors. Just a few years after Emmett Till's murder for allegedly whistling at a white woman, Frankie Lymon danced with a white girl on national TV. It was groundbreaking, but it also got Alan Freed's show canceled. Frankie soon realized solo wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Clubs paid him less without the teenagers. He felt depressed, his career declining under Levy's control. His friends were gone, and he was alone, surrounded by strangers. And then, the real problem, heroin addiction. At 15, he was introduced to heroin by an older woman at a New Year's party. He said he liked older women because they were less trouble and more rewarding. That woman showed him how to skin pop, pricking his skin with a needle for a mild kick. He knew drugs were bad, but being young and daring, he soon started shooting up. He tried to quit many times, especially after his mother died, but always went back. In 1961, he went to rehab, but couldn't shake the habit. Desperate for money for drugs, he sold his publishing rights to Morris Levy for only $1,500, millions worth of music for a pittance. After that, Levy dropped him. Frankie tried other labels, but his heavy drug use led to him being dropped again. In 1964, he married Elizabeth Waters, but it turned out she was still married to her first husband. She gave birth to his only child, Francine, who died 2 days later, pushing Frankie deeper into drugs. He moved to Los Angeles to revive his career, getting back with Zola Taylor, but their relationship ended due to his drug habit and his stealing money from her, leading to the foreclosure of her house. There were rumors of a Mexican marriage in 1965, but both Frankie and Zola later called it a publicity stunt. That same year, at 22, he made his final TV performance on Hollywood A Go-Go. He looked terrible, lip-syncing, missing a tooth, looking twice his age, ravaged by drugs. In 1966, things worsened. He was arrested 3 times in New York for grand larceny and heroin possession. He was charged with burglary after stealing drums from a studio and pawning them for drugs. Instead of jail, a judge sent him to rehab and forced him to join the military. Stationed in Georgia, he married schoolteacher Amira Eagle and stayed clean for 2 years, even performing on weekends. But he went AWOL and was dishonorably discharged. Out of the military, he still wanted to sing. He signed with Sam Bray's Big Apple Records, releasing the single I'm Sorry. Bray and Morris Levy even met, planning to release old unreleased material and new songs. Frankie started doing more shows, preparing for a comeback album. But on the 27th of February 1968, Frankie Lymon was found dead of a heroin overdose on his grandmother's bathroom floor, a syringe needle by his side. He was just 25. The story goes that Sam Bray called him back to New York for a show. Frankie, clean, didn't want to go, but Bray convinced him. Back in New York, celebrating his new deal, he accidentally overdosed the night before he was due in the studio. Frankie Lymon's death sparked immediate rumors of foul play. Some believe drug dealers he owed money to killed him, noting that dealers in the neighborhood later boasted, "My bag killed Frankie Lymon." His wife, Amira, also claimed he was hesitant to return to New York when his manager called. Another theory suggested his manager, Sam Bray, and Morris Levy murdered him. They controlled his music catalog, and artists often make more money dead. Bray and Levy had recently reconnected, and Bray promised Frankie a lucrative deal to lure him back. Amira believed Bray was sent by Levy. There were also rumors that Frankie and the teenagers were planning to sue Morris Levy for unpaid royalties. Years later, in 1981, Diana Ross's cover of Why Do Fools Fall in Love reignited the legal battle over royalties. Of the original 5 teenagers, only Jimmy Merchant and Herman Santiago were still alive. They, along with Frankie's widow, Amira Eagle, sued Morris Levy. Levy, trying to avoid paying, brought in Frankie's ex-wives, Zola Taylor and Elizabeth Waters, offering them $20,000 to claim they were his legal widows. The case devolved into a spectacle about Frankie's 3 wives. Eventually, Amira Eagle won 50% of the publishing rights. Tragically, Jimmy Merchant and Herman Santiago received nothing, as the statute of limitations had run out on their claims. Karma later caught up with Morris Levy. He was convicted of extortion and died from cancer before serving his 10-year prison sentence. Frankie Lymon, the pioneer, the Golden Throat, died at 25. What could he have achieved if he'd stayed clean? If he'd never returned to New York? He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and his story was immortalized in the film Why Do Fools Fall in Love? But for years, his grave lay unmarked, a poignant symbol of his exploited life, until fans and his widow finally gave him a headstone. Frankie Lymon changed music forever. Remember his incredible voice, his tragic life, and the legend he became.